The silent power that commands respect. 12 Stoic habits to make others value. Have you ever wondered why some people naturally command respect without saying a word, while others desperately seek validation yet remain invisible? The difference isn't in what they say, but in what they choose not to say. In the ancient philosophy of Stoicism, silence isn't weakness. It's power. It's control. It's the ultimate expression of inner strength. Today, we're going to explore 12 Stoic habits that will transform how others perceive and value you. These aren't tricks or manipulations. They're principles that have stood the test of millennia, practiced by emperors, philosophers, and warriors who understood that true power doesn't announce itself. It simply is. But before we dive deep into these transformative habits, I need you to do something crucial. Focus entirely on what's being shared here. Put aside the usual daily distractions, because what you're about to learn could fundamentally shift how you move through the world. These aren't just ideas to consider, they're tools to forge an unshakable presence that others can't help but respect. Let's begin. Habit number 1. Master the art of strategic silence. The Stoics understood something profound that most people never grasp. Words lose value when they're abundant. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, once wrote that the best revenge is to not be like your enemy. And often, our enemy is the impulse to fill every silence with noise. Have you noticed how powerful people speak less? They're not quieter because they have nothing to say. They're quiet because they understand that silence creates space for others to reveal themselves. When someone insults you, criticizes you, or tries to provoke you, your immediate instinct is to defend yourself, to counterattack, to prove them wrong. But that's exactly what they want. They want you to lose composure. They want you emotional. They want you weak. Strategic silence is different from passive avoidance. It's not about being scared to speak. It's about being disciplined enough not to speak when words would diminish you. When you remain silent in the face of provocation, you accomplish something remarkable. You maintain control of the situation while forcing the other person to fill the uncomfortable void they created. Often, they'll reveal more about themselves in that silence than you ever could by responding. Think about the last time someone tried to start an argument with you. What happened when you didn't engage? Most likely they became more frustrated. Their true character emerged, and you maintained your dignity. That's the power of strategic silence. You didn't need to prove anything because your composure proved everything. But strategic silence isn't just about conflict, it's about observation. When you speak less, you listen more. You pick up on details others miss. You see the dynamics of situations more clearly. You become the person who understands what's really happening while everyone else is too busy talking to notice. Epictetus taught that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak. This isn't just practical advice, it's a psychological advantage. The person who listens controls the conversation because they're gathering information while others are giving it away. Practice this starting today. In your next conversation, resist the urge to immediately respond. Pause. Let silence exist for a moment. Watch what happens. You'll notice something interesting. People will respect your words more because they're fewer. They'll lean in when you speak because they know it matters. Your silence becomes the frame that gives your words value. Remember, silence isn't about being passive or avoiding confrontation. It's about choosing your battles, conserving your energy, and refusing to give others the emotional reaction they're fishing for. It's about being so secure in yourself that you don't need constant validation through words. That's when respect comes naturally. Habit number 2, walk away from what doesn't serve you. The second Stoic habit that commands respect is perhaps the most difficult for most people. The ability to walk away, not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of a calm recognition that something or someone doesn't align with your values and your peace. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And nowhere is this truer than in our inability to let go of toxic relationships, dead-end situations, and environments that drain our energy. We stay in these circumstances not because they serve us, but because we fear the unknown of leaving. We fear being alone. We fear others' opinions. We fear that maybe we won't find something better. But here's the Stoic truth that changes everything. Your dignity is worth more than any relationship, any job, any situation that requires you to compromise your core values. Walking away isn't giving up. It's waking up to the reality that you deserve better, and more importantly, that your time and energy are finite resources that should be invested wisely. When you develop the strength to walk away from what doesn't serve you, something profound happens in how others perceive you. You're no longer desperate. You're no longer controllable. You're no longer someone who can be taken for granted, because you've demonstrated through action, not words, that you value yourself enough to leave situations that diminish you. Think about someone you deeply respect. Chances are that person has boundaries. They don't tolerate disrespect. They don't stay where they're not valued. They don't exhaust themselves trying to fix what's fundamentally broken. And because of this, people treat them differently, with more care, with more consideration, with more respect. This doesn't mean you abandon ship at the first sign of difficulty. The Stoics weren't about avoiding challenges. They were about confronting reality clearly. There's a difference between a situation that's temporarily difficult but ultimately worthwhile, and a situation that's fundamentally misaligned with who you are and where you're going. Marcus Aurelius faced endless challenges as emperor: betrayal, war, plague, political intrigue. But he also knew when to let go of what he couldn't control. He didn't waste energy on things outside his influence. He focused on his responses, his character, his inner citadel that no external circumstance could touch. You have the same power. When you walk away from a toxic friendship, you're not losing a friend. You're gaining peace and opening space for better relationships. When you quit a job that doesn't respect your worth, you're not losing security. You're betting on yourself and creating opportunity for something aligned with your value. When you end a relationship that's become destructive, you're not giving up on love. You're choosing to love yourself enough not to accept less than you deserve. The ability to walk away demonstrates something crucial about your character. It shows you have standards. It shows you know your worth. It shows you're not afraid of being alone because you're comfortable with yourself. And ironically, this quality makes others want to be around you more, not less, because people respect those who respect themselves. Start practicing this today. Identify one situation in your life that consistently drains you without giving back, one relationship that takes more than it gives, one commitment that no longer aligns with your values, and begin the process of walking away. Not with drama, not with lengthy explanations, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their worth. The Stoics understood that life is too short to spend it in places and with people that diminish your spirit. Your time is the only truly non-renewable resource you have. Spend it wisely, and when you do, others will notice. They'll see someone who values themselves, and they'll naturally value you in return. Habit number 3, control your reactions, not circumstances. One of the most powerful Stoic principles, and the third habit that commands respect, is the understanding that you cannot control what happens to you, but you can absolutely control how you respond. Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of history's greatest philosophers, taught that freedom doesn't come from controlling external circumstances. It comes from controlling yourself. Most people live their lives as emotional pinballs, bouncing from one reaction to another based on whatever external stimulus hits them. Someone criticizes them, they get angry. Someone praises them, they get happy. The market crashes, they panic. Things go well, they become overconfident. Their entire emotional state is dictated by forces outside their control. And because of this, they never truly have power. But when you develop the ability to control your reactions regardless of circumstances. You become someone entirely different. You become steady, reliable, unshakable, the person others look to when chaos erupts because they know you won't lose your composure. Think about the people you most respect. Do they fall apart at the first sign of trouble? Do they lash out when criticized? Do they become arrogant when things go well? Probably not. More likely, they maintain an even keel regardless of external conditions. They face good news and bad news with the same measured response. And this emotional stability makes them trustworthy, respectable, and ultimately powerful. Marcus Aurelius faced assassination attempts, the death of multiple children, endless wars, and a deadly plague during his reign. Yet his writings in Meditations show a man focused on his own character and responses rather than the terrible circumstances he couldn't change. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending everything is fine. It's about recognizing the difference between what you can control and what you cannot, and refusing to waste energy on the latter. When someone insults you, you can't control their words, but you can control whether those words affect your peace. When life presents an unexpected challenge, you can't control the challenge itself, but you can control your resourcefulness in responding to it. Developing this habit requires practice. Start by catching yourself in reactive moments. When something triggers an emotional response, pause before acting on it. Ask yourself, what about this situation is actually within my control? Usually, you'll find that the only thing you truly control is your own thoughts and actions. Then ask, what response aligns with the person I want to be? This simple pause between stimulus and response is where your power lives. It's the space where you choose your character rather than letting circumstances choose it for you. And when others see you maintaining composure under pressure, remaining calm when everyone else panics, responding thoughtfully rather than reactively, they can't help but respect you. Someone who controls their reactions is dangerous in the best possible way. They can't be manipulated through emotion. They can't be provoked into foolish actions. They can't be controlled by external circumstances. They've internalized the ultimate Stoic principle that Epictetus taught. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Begin implementing this today. The next time something doesn't go your way, practice pausing. Take a breath. Recognize what you can control. Your attitude, your effort, your response. Let go of what you cannot control. Other people's actions, external outcomes, circumstances beyond your influence. Then act from a place of chosen response rather than automatic reaction. Over time, this habit will transform not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. You'll become someone who faces life's inevitable challenges with equanimity. Someone who can be counted on when things get difficult. Someone whose respect for themselves naturally generates respect from others. Habit number 4. Invest in your own growth relentlessly. The fourth habit that commands deep respect is an unwavering commitment to your own growth and improvement. The Stoics believed that the only true good was virtue, which meant constantly developing your character, knowledge, skills, and wisdom. Marcus Aurelius would wake up before dawn, even as emperor, to study philosophy and work on himself. This wasn't vanity, it was necessity. When you invest relentlessly in your own growth, something shifts in how others perceive you. You're no longer static. You're not the same person you were last year, last month, or even last week. You're constantly evolving, improving, becoming more capable and more valuable, and people respect those who refuse to stagnate. Think about it. Do you respect someone who's been doing the same thing the same way for 20 years without growth? Or do you respect someone who's constantly learning, adapting, improving, and pushing themselves beyond their previous limits? The answer is obvious. Growth is attractive. Stagnation is not. But here's where most people get it wrong. They invest in growth only when it's convenient, when they feel motivated, when circumstances are imperfect. The Stoics understood that real growth happens precisely when it's uncomfortable, inconvenient, and difficult. That's when your character is actually being forged. Seneca wrote that difficulties strengthen the mind, just as labor strengthens the body. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to develop qualities you didn't previously have. Lost your job? Opportunity to develop resilience and resourcefulness. Facing criticism? Opportunity to develop emotional regulation and wisdom. Experiencing failure? Opportunity to develop perseverance and humility. When you adopt this mindset, that every experience, good or bad, is material for your growth, you become unstoppable. You're not afraid of challenges because you see them as the gym where your character gets stronger. You don't avoid difficult conversations because you recognize them as practice for better communication. You don't shy away from failure because you understand it's how you learn what works and what doesn't. This relentless investment in growth has a compounding effect. Each book you read gives you knowledge that informs better decisions. Each skill you develop opens doors previously closed. Each character quality you strengthen makes you more capable in all areas of life. You become a person of increasing value, not just to others, but to yourself. And here's what's crucial. This investment can never be taken from you. Someone can take your money, your possessions, your position, but they cannot take what you've learned, the skills you've developed, or the character you've built. These are yours forever. They're the only truly secure investment you can make. Start today by identifying one area where you want to grow. Not something you should grow in, not something others think you should improve, but something you genuinely want to develop. Maybe it's a skill related to your work. Maybe it's emotional intelligence. Maybe it's physical fitness. Maybe it's deeper knowledge in a subject that fascinates you. Then commit to consistent daily progress in that area, not massive leaps, just consistent small steps. Read for 30 minutes, practice for 20 minutes, work out for 15 minutes. The specific activity matters less than the consistency and intentionality. The Stoics understood that we're not defined by grand gestures, but by daily habits repeated over time. Who you are today is the sum of your daily actions over the past months and years. Who you'll become is being determined by what you do today and tomorrow and the day after that. When others see you consistently working on yourself, not boasting about it but simply doing it, they recognize something admirable. They see discipline. They see self-respect. They see someone who values their own potential enough to actualize it, and they respect you for it because most people don't have that level of commitment to themselves. This habit also protects you from one of life's greatest dangers, becoming so comfortable that you stop growing. The moment you think you've arrived, that you know enough, that you're good enough as you are, you begin the slow process of deterioration. The Stoics knew this. They understood that life itself is constant change, and to stop growing is to start dying. So make the commitment now. Invest in yourself relentlessly, not for others' approval, not to impress anyone, but because you recognize that you have potential you haven't yet realized, and the greatest responsibility you have is to become the best version of yourself possible. That commitment, lived consistently, commands respect, like almost nothing else. Habit number 5. Honor your word above all else. The 5th Stoic habit that generates deep respect is simple to understand, but challenging to implement consistently. Be someone whose word is absolutely reliable. The Stoics placed tremendous value on integrity, which meant alignment between your words and your actions. Epictetus taught that it's better to die than to lie, because lying corrupts your character in ways that death cannot. In today's world, most people's words mean very little. They say they'll call and don't. They commit to plans and cancel. They make promises and break them. They agree to standards and violate them. Their words and actions exist in separate universes. And because this is so common, most people's commitments are taken with a grain of salt. There's always a mental asterisk next to their promises. But when you become someone whose word is absolutely reliable, you stand out dramatically. You become rare, valuable, someone others can actually count on. And this generates a level of respect that no amount of charisma or charm can manufacture. Think about your own life. Who do you most respect? Chances are they're people who do what they say they'll do. When they commit, you know it will happen. When they give their word, you can plan around it. There's no doubt, no question, no need to follow up repeatedly. Their integrity is unquestionable. This habit has profound implications for how you live. It means you become very careful about what you commit to because you know you'll have to follow through. You stop making casual promises. You stop agreeing to things out of politeness that you have no intention of doing. You stop overcommitting because you recognize that every yes to something is a no to something else. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of being able to look any man in the face because you have nothing to hide. This is the freedom that comes from integrity. You don't need to remember what story you told to whom. You don't need to avoid certain people because you didn't keep your word. You don't carry the mental weight of unfulfilled commitments. Your life becomes simpler, cleaner, and more powerful. But here's what makes this habit particularly challenging. Keeping your word often requires sacrifice. It means showing up when you don't feel like it. It means doing what you said you'd do, even when circumstances change. It means honoring commitments, even when they're no longer convenient or beneficial to you. This is where character is truly tested. The Stoics understood that anyone can keep their word when it's easy. The measure of your character is whether you keep your word when it's hard, when the weather turns bad, but you committed to help someone move, when a better opportunity comes along, but you already agreed to something else, when you're tired or unmotivated, but you made a promise to yourself about your daily practices. These moments of choice are where you either build or destroy your integrity. Each time you honor your word despite difficulty, you strengthen that muscle. Each time you break your word for convenience, you weaken it. Over time, you become either someone whose commitments mean everything or someone whose commitments mean nothing. There's no middle ground. Start implementing this habit by conducting an integrity audit. Look at your life honestly. Where have you been unreliable? What commitments have you made that you haven't kept? What promises to yourself have you broken? This isn't about shame or guilt. It's about seeing reality clearly so you can address it. Then begin the process of becoming impeccable with your word. This might mean having uncomfortable conversations where you admit you haven't kept past commitments and you're changing that. It might mean being more selective about what you agree to. It might mean saying no more often so that your yeses mean something. One powerful practice is to make and keep small commitments to yourself daily. Tell yourself you'll work out at a specific time, then do it. Commit to reading for 20 minutes, then do it. Promise yourself you'll go to bed at a certain time, then do it. These small acts of self-integrity build the foundation for larger ones. When others see that you consistently do what you say you'll do, their respect for you transforms. You become someone they can actually rely on in a world full of unreliable people. Your reputation becomes your greatest asset. And perhaps most importantly, you develop deep respect for yourself because you know you're a person of integrity. The Stoics believed that your character is your fate, and nothing shapes your character more definitively than the relationship between your words and your actions. Make them aligned, and you build a life of integrity and respect. Let them drift apart, and you build a life of weakness and disrespect. The choice, as always, is yours. Habit number 6, practice voluntary discomfort. The 6th Stoic habit is one that seems counterintuitive to modern comfort-seeking culture, but it's essential for building the kind of inner strength that commands respect. regularly practice voluntary discomfort. The Stoics didn't just endure hardship when it came to them. They actively sought it out in controlled ways to strengthen their resilience and appreciate what they had. Seneca practiced poverty one day each month, eating simple food and wearing basic clothing to remind himself that losing his wealth wouldn't destroy him. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor with access to every luxury, practiced temperance and self-denial. Epictetus, who had endured slavery, taught his students to regularly imagine losing everything they had so they wouldn't take it for granted or become weakened by comfort. Why would anyone deliberately make themselves uncomfortable? Because comfort, while pleasant, weakens you over time. When you've adapted to a certain level of ease, any disruption to that ease feels catastrophic. You become fragile, dependent on specific conditions to maintain your well-being. Your confidence evaporates the moment circumstances shift. But when you regularly practice voluntary discomfort, cold showers, fasting, early morning workouts, sleeping on the floor occasionally, wearing simpler clothing, declining luxuries, you can afford, you develop anti-fragility. You prove to yourself that you can handle difficult conditions. You maintain perspective on what you actually need versus what you've become dependent on. You build confidence that's based on internal strength rather than external conditions. This practice also dramatically increases your appreciation for what you have. When you fast for a day, your next meal tastes incredible. When you take cold showers for a week, a hot shower feels like luxury. When you practice voluntary poverty, you recognize how abundant your normal life actually is. The Stoics understood that one of the greatest obstacles to happiness is hedonic adaptation, getting used to good things so they no longer bring joy. Voluntary discomfort resets this adaptation. But perhaps most importantly for commanding respect, practicing voluntary discomfort demonstrates something crucial about your character. You're not soft. You're not dependent on comfort. You're not someone who falls apart when conditions aren't perfect. You've trained yourself to handle hardship, which means when real hardship comes, and it always does, you're prepared in ways that others aren't. Think about the people you most respect. Do they crumble at the slightest inconvenience? Do they need everything perfect to function? Probably not. More likely, they're people who can handle tough situations, who don't complain about minor discomforts, who maintain effectiveness regardless of conditions. This quality commands respect because it's rare and valuable. Start implementing this habit with small practices. Take cold showers for a week. Wake up an hour earlier than necessary for a month. Fast for 24 hours once a week. Exercise in uncomfortable conditions. Say no to small pleasures you normally indulge in. Sleep with fewer blankets. Wear less comfortable clothing. The specific practice matters less than the principle. Regularly choose discomfort to strengthen your tolerance for it. This isn't masochism. It's training. You're building resilience the same way you'd build muscle, by stressing the system in controlled ways so it adapts and becomes stronger. The Stoics also practiced negative visualization, imagining losing the things and people they valued. This sounds morbid, but it served a crucial purpose. It prevented them from taking good things for granted. It prepared them mentally for loss, and it made them more resilient when actual loss occurred, because they'd already processed it mentally. You can practice this too. Imagine losing your job, your home, your relationship, your health. Not to obsess over these possibilities, but to recognize that your well-being doesn't ultimately depend on any external condition. Your capacity for contentment, for purpose, for effectiveness exists independently of circumstances. This realization is liberating and empowering. When others see you handling discomfort with equanimity, maintaining effectiveness in less than ideal conditions, and not complaining about minor inconveniences, they recognize strength. They see someone who isn't fragile or dependent, someone who would be valuable to have around when things get difficult, and they respect you for it. The modern world is designed to make everything comfortable and convenient, but this comes at a cost. It weakens us. It makes us dependent on conditions we can't always control. The Stoics knew better. They understood that true security comes not from comfortable, external conditions, but from the internal strength to handle whatever conditions arise. Build that strength through voluntary discomfort, and you'll command respect, while most others are still complaining that life isn't easy enough. Habit number 7. Focus on what you can give, not what you can get. The 7th Stoic habit that commands respect is a fundamental shift in orientation. Focus on what you can give rather than what you can get. This might seem counterintuitive. We're taught to look out for ourselves, to secure our interests, to make sure we're not being taken advantage of. But the Stoics understood something paradoxical. The people who focus on what they can contribute end up receiving far more than those who focus on what they can extract. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about his duty to serve the common good. Not because he was weak or self-sacrificing, but because he recognized that his purpose as a human being was to contribute to the whole. He believed that we're social creatures meant to work together, and that the person who best serves the community ultimately serves themselves by living according to their nature. When you shift your focus from getting to giving, everything changes. Instead of entering conversations thinking, what can this person do for me? You think, how can I help this person? Instead of approaching your work asking, how much money can I make? You ask, how much value can I create? Instead of viewing relationships as transactions, where you hope to come out ahead, you view them as opportunities to contribute to someone else's well-being. This shift generates respect for several reasons. First, it's rare. Most people are focused on their own interests, consciously or unconsciously. When someone encounters a person genuinely oriented toward giving, toward contributing, toward adding value, it stands out dramatically. It's refreshing and attractive. Second, it demonstrates abundance mentality. When you're focused on giving, you're implicitly stating that you have enough. You're operating from fullness rather than scarcity. You're not desperately trying to accumulate because you're secure in what you already have and who you already are. This security is magnetic. Third, it creates reciprocity naturally without demanding it. When you consistently give value to others without keeping score, without expecting immediate return, something interesting happens. People want to reciprocate. They want to help you, support. You connect you with opportunities, not because you demanded it, but because you've demonstrated your value, and people naturally want to maintain relationships with valuable people. The key distinction here is between giving from strength versus giving from weakness. The Stoics weren't advocating that you become a doormat, letting others take advantage of you. They were advocating that you be so strong, so capable, so valuable that you can afford to be generous. That's very different from giving because you don't value yourself or because you're trying to buy affection. Seneca distinguished between foolish generosity and wise generosity. Foolish generosity is giving to anyone who asks without discernment, depleting yourself, enabling others' bad behavior. Wise generosity is giving thoughtfully to worthy recipients in ways that actually help rather than harm, from a foundation of self-sufficiency. Start implementing this habit by looking for opportunities to add value in your daily interactions. In conversations, focus on understanding and helping rather than impressing or extracting. In your work, focus on excellence and impact rather than just compensation. In your relationships, focus on how you can support the other person's growth and happiness rather than what they can do for you. This doesn't mean ignoring your own needs or boundaries. The Stoics were clear that you can't give what you don't have, which is why habits like investing in your own growth and. Maintaining your integrity come first. You give from overflow, not from depletion. You maintain boundaries around what you won't give, which makes what you do give more valuable. When you adopt this orientation consistently, people begin to see you differently. You're not trying to use them. You're not keeping score. You're not in it for yourself. You're someone who makes situations better by being in them. You add value to conversations, projects, relationships, and communities. And that quality is rare and deeply respected. Moreover, this habit aligns with the Stoic principle of virtue as the highest good. When you focus on being useful, on contributing, on serving, you're living virtuously, you're fulfilling your purpose as a human being, and there's a deep satisfaction that comes from this that no amount of taking or getting can provide. The paradox is that the more you give, the more you receive, not because you're giving to get, but because value begets value. People want to be around valuable people. Opportunities flow to those who've demonstrated they can create value. Resources gravitate toward those who use them well. By focusing on what you can give, you become someone worth investing in. Begin today by asking yourself in each situation, what can I contribute here? How can I make this better? What value can I add? Then do it without keeping score, without expecting immediate return, but with the confidence that living this way is both virtuous and strategic. Over time, you'll build a reputation as someone who makes things better, and respect will follow naturally. Habit number 8, accept responsibility for everything in your life. The 8th Stoic habit that commands profound respect is perhaps the most difficult but most transformative. Accept complete responsibility for everything in your life. Not blame for things that aren't your fault, but responsibility for how you respond to and handle whatever occurs. The Stoics were radical in their insistence that while you can't control external events, you have absolute responsibility for your internal state and your actions. Most people live their lives as victims, at least partially. They blame their circumstances, their upbringing, their bad luck, their difficult boss, their unsupportive partner, the economy, the system, or any number of external factors for why their life isn't what they want it to be. And while it's true that external factors exist and influence outcomes, the victim mindset is fundamentally disempowering. It places the locus of control outside yourself, which means you're always at the mercy of forces you can't influence. The Stoic approach flips this entirely. Epictetus taught that we're not disturbed by events, but by our views of events. Marcus Aurelius wrote that if something is endurable, then endure it. If it's unendurable, it will end you, so stop complaining. Seneca argued that the wise person takes full responsibility for their responses, their character, their choices, and their development regardless of circumstances. When you adopt this mindset that you are fully responsible for your life, everything changes. You stop waiting for circumstances to improve. You stop blaming others for your situation. You stop making excuses for why you haven't achieved what you want to achieve or become who you want to become. Instead, you ask, given this situation, what can I do? What's within my control? How can I respond effectively? This generates enormous respect for several reasons. First, nobody respects a victim. Even when people have genuine sympathy for someone who's had genuinely terrible circumstances, there's a limit to how much respect that generates. Pity isn't respect. They're actually opposites. When you refuse to play the victim, even when you legitimately could, you demonstrate strength that people can't help but admire. Second, taking responsibility makes you someone who solves problems rather than complains about them. Every organization, every relationship, every community needs problem solvers. These are the people who, when something goes wrong, immediately move to what can we do about this, rather than whose fault is this. That quality makes you valuable and respected. Third, responsibility demonstrates agency. It shows you believe you have power over your life, and that belief tends to be self-fulfilling. People who believe they're in control of their destiny act differently than people who believe they're at the mercy of circumstances. They take initiative. They persist through difficulty. They find ways around obstacles. And because they act this way, they tend to achieve better outcomes, which reinforces their belief in their own agency. The key to implementing this habit is distinguishing between fault and responsibility. Fault is about the past and blame. Responsibility is about the present and action. You may not be at fault for the situation you find yourself in. Maybe you did face genuinely unfair circumstances. Maybe you were dealt a bad hand. Maybe others did wrong things that affected you. None of that changes the fact that you are responsible for what you do now. If you're in a job you hate, maybe it's not your fault you're there. Maybe the economy tanked and limited your options, but it is your responsibility to either improve the situation or change it. If you're in an unhealthy relationship, maybe you're not the one creating the problems, but it is your responsibility to either work on it or leave. If you're out of shape, maybe you have genetic disadvantages or a demanding schedule, but it's still your responsibility to do what you can with what you have. Start implementing this by catching yourself when you're in blame mode. Notice when you're explaining why something isn't your responsibility, why you couldn't help it, why it's someone else's fault. Then shift. Even if that's true, what's my responsibility here? What can I control? What action can I take? This doesn't mean everything is your fault or that you should beat yourself up over circumstances beyond your control. It means you recognize that regardless of how you got here, you're the one who has to deal with it. You're the protagonist of your life story, not a side character. Main characters don't wait to be rescued. They take action. The Stoics also applied this principle to their own mistakes and failures. When Marcus Aurelius made a bad decision, he didn't blame his advisors or circumstances. He took responsibility, learned from it, and moved forward. This kind of radical ownership of both successes and failures builds character in ways that excuse-making never can. When others see you taking responsibility, not making excuses, not blaming circumstances, not playing the victim, they recognize someone fundamentally different. Someone who has agency, someone who can be trusted with important things because they won't pass the buck. Someone who will find solutions rather than explanations for why things can't be done. That person commands respect in any context. Moreover, this habit is liberating. When you accept complete responsibility for your life, you're no longer dependent on external changes for your situation to improve. You have power, you have options. You may not be able to control everything, but you can always control something, and that's enough to start changing your trajectory. Begin today by taking complete responsibility for one area of your life where you've been making excuses or blaming circumstances. Stop explaining why it's not your fault and start asking what you can do about it. Then do that. Then do the next thing. Then the next. Watch how your life transforms when you stop waiting for someone or something else to change it and start recognizing that you're the only one who can and will. Habit number 9. Develop unshakable inner standards. The 9th Stoic habit that generates deep respect is developing and maintaining unshakable inner standards for how you live, regardless of what others are doing or saying. The Stoics believed that virtue was its own reward, and that the truly free person was one who lived according to their own standards rather than being dependent on others' approval or fearing others' judgment. Marcus Aurelius wrote that just because someone sins doesn't mean you have to. He was constantly surrounded by people behaving badly, corruption, flattery, manipulation, cowardice, and he had to remind himself repeatedly not to let others' low standards lower his own. This is a battle everyone faces. The pressure to conform to whatever behavioral standards surround you is immense, and most people succumb to it without realizing they're doing so. But when you develop clear internal standards for how you operate, how you treat people, how you handle your commitments, what behaviors you will and won't engage in, what you stand for and what you won't tolerate, and you maintain those standards consistently regardless of circumstances, you become someone entirely different. You're not adapting your behavior based on who's watching or what's socially acceptable. You have a code and you live by it. This generates respect for several reasons. First, it's rare. Most people are highly adaptive to social pressure, adjusting their behavior, their opinions, even their expressed values based on who they're with and what's socially rewarded in that moment. When you encounter someone who doesn't do this, who maintains consistent standards and principles regardless of social pressure, it stands out dramatically. Second, it demonstrates integrity in the truest sense. Integration, wholeness. You're the same person in private as in public. You're the same person with powerful people as with powerless people. You don't have different versions of yourself for different audiences. This coherence is deeply attractive because it means you can be trusted. There's no hidden version of you that might emerge under different circumstances. Third, having clear internal standards makes you non-manipulable. You can't be controlled through social pressure. You can't be threatened with social consequences. You can't be bribed with acceptance or approval. You've already decided how you're going to behave based on your own standards, so others' attempts to influence you through social mechanisms fall flat. This makes you powerful. The Stoics spent considerable time defining their standards. What was virtuous and what wasn't? What behaviors aligned with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, and which didn't? They didn't leave this to vague feelings or social norms. They thought deeply about their principles and then practiced living by them, regardless of circumstances. You can do the same. Start by asking yourself, what are my non-negotiable standards? How do I treat people even when they can't help or hurt me? What do I do even when no one's watching? What won't I do even if everyone else is doing it? What behaviors, regardless of social acceptability, are beneath my standards? Write these down. Be specific. Not vague values like integrity or kindness, but concrete standards. I don't lie, even when the truth is inconvenient. I don't gossip about people who aren't present. I don't break commitments, even when something better comes along. I treat people with the same respect, regardless of their status or what they can do for me. I don't compromise my values for social acceptance. Then comes the harder part, living by these standards consistently, even when it costs you, because it will cost you. Maintaining high standards when everyone around you has low ones creates friction. You'll lose some social opportunities. Some people won't like you. You'll miss out on advantages that come from cutting corners. But here's what you gain: self-respect. The deep satisfaction of knowing you're living according to your own standards rather than being pushed around by circumstances and social pressure, and the respect of anyone worth being respected by, because people of character recognize and respect character in others. The Stoics also believed in regularly examining whether you're living up to your own standards. Seneca wrote about reviewing his day each evening, asking himself where he fell short of his standards and how he could do better tomorrow. This isn't about guilt or perfectionism. It's about commitment to your own principles and honest self-assessment. When you develop this habit, clear internal standards consistently maintained, people notice. They see someone who doesn't change their behavior based on who's around or what's convenient. Someone who can be counted on to behave in predictable, principled ways. Someone who has a backbone, and they respect it, even if they don't always like it or understand it, because deep down everyone respects integrity even when it's inconvenient for them. Start today by identifying 3 non-negotiable standards you want to live by. Write them down, then begin the practice of maintaining these standards regardless of circumstances, social pressure, or personal cost. When you slip up, and you will, don't beat yourself up. Just recommit. Over time, these standards will become so integrated into who you are that maintaining them becomes automatic, and the respect that follows will be a natural byproduct of the character you've built. Habit number 10, master your attention and protect your mind. The 10th Stoic habit that commands respect in the modern world might be more relevant now than ever. Master your attention and fiercely protect what enters your mind. The Stoics lived before social media, 24-hour news cycles, and smartphones, but they understood something crucial that's been forgotten. What you allow into your mind shapes who you become, and most things clamoring for your attention are worthless or worse. Epictetus taught his students to be highly selective about what they exposed themselves to, who they spent time with, and what ideas they entertained. He compared the mind to a temple that should only admit what is sacred. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about not letting external nonsense disturb his inner tranquility. They understood that attention is perhaps your most valuable resource, and wasting it is tragic. In the modern world, attention has become a battlefield. Thousands of companies, platforms, and content creators are competing viciously to capture and hold your attention, because attention can be converted to money. Most people have completely lost control of their attention, mindlessly scrolling, constantly checking, addicted to distraction, consuming endless streams of information that add no value to their lives. When you master your attention, when you become highly selective about what you consume, when you can sit in silence without needing distraction, when you can focus deeply on what matters. Instead of fragmenting across a dozen things, you develop capabilities that are increasingly rare and valuable. You can think deeply. You can create meaningfully. You can be present with people instead of constantly distracted. You can do work that actually requires sustained concentration. This generates respect because it demonstrates discipline and strength. In a world where most people are slaves to their devices and dopamine cycles, someone who has mastered their attention stands out as having remarkable self-control. They're not constantly checking their phone. They're not always distracted. When they're with you, they're actually present. When they commit to something, they can give it sustained focus rather than scattered fragments of attention. The Stoics would be horrified by how modern people treat their minds. We expose ourselves to constant negativity through news that's specifically designed to trigger fear and outrage. We consume opinions from people who haven't thought deeply about anything. We fill every moment of potential boredom with digital stimulation. We allow our mental environment to be determined by algorithms designed to maximize engagement rather than well-being. The solution is to become fiercely protective of your attention and mental environment. This means making hard choices. It might mean deleting social media apps or severely limiting their use. It might mean not watching the news or consuming it very selectively. It might mean being choosy about what podcasts, books, or videos you consume, preferring depth over novelty. It might mean spending time in silence and solitude rather than constant stimulation. Start implementing this by conducting an attention audit. Track where your attention goes for a week. How much time on social media? How much watching content that doesn't improve your life? How much consuming negativity? How much on genuinely valuable things? Deep work, meaningful relationships, important projects, your own development. Then begin reclaiming your attention. Set strict boundaries around technology. Maybe phone in another room at night. Maybe no checking before a certain time in the morning. Maybe app limits that force you to be intentional. Maybe deleting apps entirely and only accessing them on a computer, which creates more friction. Replace mindless consumption with conscious selection. Instead of scrolling through an endless feed, choose specific high-quality content that actually adds value. Instead of constant news consumption, maybe check once a day or even less. Instead of filling every moment with stimulation, practice being present without distraction. The Stoics also emphasized protecting your mind from toxic people and environments. Seneca wrote that we should guard who we spend time with because we inevitably take on the qualities of those around us. If you're constantly around negativity, cynicism, gossip, and low standards, those things will infect your own thinking. No matter how strong you think you are. This doesn't mean living in a bubble or only surrounding yourself with yes men. It means being selective about who gets regular access to your attention and mental space. It means limiting time with energy vampires and increasing time with people who challenge and inspire you. It means choosing environments that support the person you're trying to become, rather than ones that pull you toward your worst tendencies. When others see you exercising this level of control over your attention and mental environment, they recognize something powerful. They see someone who values their own mind enough to protect it. Someone who isn't controlled by every notification and trigger. Someone who can be fully present because they're not mentally scattered across dozens of digital distractions. That level of self-mastery commands respect. Moreover, this habit has compounding benefits. The more you protect your attention, the more capable you become of deep work and meaningful creation. The higher quality your mental inputs, the higher quality your thinking and outputs. The more present you are in relationships, the deeper and more meaningful they become. You become more capable, more peaceful, and more effective across every domain of life. Begin today by identifying one way you're allowing your attention to be hijacked that doesn't serve you. Maybe it's social media, maybe it's news, maybe it's a particular app or website, maybe it's certain people or environments. Then set a clear boundary around it. Start small if you need to, but start. Gradually expand your control over your attention until you're the master of your mind, rather than being at the mercy of whatever wants your attention. The Stoics knew this was essential. In the modern world, it's becoming a superpower. Habit number 11, practice amor fati, love your fate. The 11th Stoic habit is perhaps the most advanced and transformative, amor fati, which means love of fate. This is the practice of not just accepting whatever happens to you, but actually embracing it, finding value in it, even loving it as the exact experience you needed to become who you're meant to be. Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics believed that a wise person doesn't just endure their fate, they love it. This sounds almost absurd at first. How could you love losing your job, or getting sick, or being betrayed, or failing at something important? These things hurt. They're genuinely difficult. But the Stoic perspective offers something profound. What if every single thing that happens to you, even the painful parts, is exactly what you need for your development? What if your life is perfect for forging your character, even when, especially when, it's difficult? This isn't positive thinking or toxic positivity that denies pain. It's a deeper recognition that resistance to reality causes more suffering than reality itself. When something difficult happens and you spend energy wishing it hadn't, being angry that it did, or imagining how unfair it is, you're adding psychological suffering to whatever actual difficulty exists. You're fighting reality, which is a fight you can never win. Amor fati is the practice of releasing that resistance. It's saying, this happened, it is my reality now. How can I use this? What can I learn from this? How might this ultimately serve my growth, even though it's painful right now? This shift doesn't make difficult things stop being difficult, but it removes the extra layer of suffering created by resistance and wishing things were different. This habit generates enormous respect because it demonstrates the highest level of mental and emotional mastery. Most people fall apart when things go wrong. They complain, they play victim, they rage against the unfairness of it all. When you encounter someone who faces difficulty with equanimity and even finds value in it, you're witnessing rare strength. Think about someone going through genuinely hard times who maintains their composure, continues moving forward, and even talks about what they're learning from the experience. Don't you respect that immensely? Don't you recognize that as a level of strength most people don't have? That's amor fati in practice. Nietzsche, who was deeply influenced by Stoicism, wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is. Necessary, still less conceal it, but love it." This is radical acceptance taken to its logical conclusion. To practice this, start by catching yourself resisting reality. When something doesn't go your way, notice the mental energy you spend wishing it were different, complaining about it, or being angry about it. Then consciously shift to acceptance. This is what is. Then go further. How might this serve me? What opportunity does this create? What can I learn? How might my future self look back on this as exactly what needed to happen? This practice is especially powerful with past events you've been carrying resentment about, the painful childhood, the relationship that ended badly, the opportunity you lost, the mistake you made. As long as you're wishing those things hadn't happened, you're still suffering from them. Amor fati means recognizing that those exact experiences created who you are now, including your strength, your empathy, your wisdom, your capabilities. Would you trade who you've become to not have experienced those things? If not, then you can practice loving even the difficult parts of your fate because they forged you. The Stoics believed that a divine logic governed the universe and that everything happened for reasons, even if we couldn't see them. You don't have to believe in that particular metaphysics to practice amor fati. You just have to recognize that resisting what has already happened is pointless suffering, while embracing it as your path forward is empowering. When you develop this habit, facing difficulty without complaint, finding value in painful experiences, accepting your entire life path as exactly what you needed, people can't help but respect you. They see someone who isn't broken by hardship, someone who turns obstacles into opportunities, someone who has transcended the victim mentality that traps most people. That level of mastery over your own mind and emotions is the highest form of strength. Start practicing today with small things. Traffic jam, amor fati. Maybe you needed this moment of quiet. Rained out plans, amor fati. Now you have unexpected free time. Small setback at work, amor fati. This will teach you something valuable. As you practice with small things, you build the capacity to apply it to larger ones. Eventually, you develop the ability to face even major difficulties with the same attitude. This is my fate, and I love it because it's mine, and it's forging me into who I'm becoming. Habit number 12, memento mori. Remember you will die. The 12th and final Stoic habit is perhaps the most powerful for generating both respect and a well-lived life. Memento mori. Remember you will die. The Stoics regularly contemplated their mortality not out of morbidity, but because remembering death is the key to living fully. When you truly internalize that your time is finite and unknown, everything changes about how you live. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you could leave life right now and that should determine what you do and say and think. He regularly reminded himself that he was mortal, that his time was limited, that one day he would die and be forgotten. This wasn't depressing to him. It was liberating and focusing. It made him ask, what matters? How should I spend this precious limited time? What do I want to be true of my life before I die? Most people live as if they have infinite time. They procrastinate on what matters. They waste time on triviality. They put off difficult conversations and important changes. They're waiting for some day to really live, to really try, to really show up as who they want to be. And then decades pass in a blur, and they're shocked to find themselves near the end, having never really lived deliberately. Memento mori destroys that illusion. You don't have infinite time. You have today, and you might not even have tomorrow, the person you're planning to eventually become. You need to start becoming them now, because there is no eventually. There's only now. The things you're planning to someday do or say, you need to do or say them now, because someday isn't promised. This generates profound respect because it creates a quality of aliveness and intentionality that's magnetic. When someone lives with death awareness, they're more present, they're more authentic, they're more courageous. They don't waste time on nonsense because they recognize how precious time is. They say what needs to be said. They do what needs to be done. They show up fully rather than holding back for some future moment that might never come. Think about how you behave when you're acutely aware that something is temporary. The last day of a vacation, the final moments with someone you love before a long separation. Suddenly you're fully present. Suddenly what matters becomes clear. Suddenly you drop the petty concerns and focus on what's real. Memento mori is practicing that awareness constantly. The Stoics also use death awareness to maintain perspective on what actually matters. Status games, meaningless when you remember everyone involved will be dead in a century. Minor inconveniences, laughable compared to the ultimate inconvenience of death. Others' judgments, irrelevant when you remember both you and they will soon be gone. This perspective is incredibly freeing. To practice memento mori, regularly remind yourself that you're going to die. This sounds dark, but it's actually the most life-affirming practice possible. You could use a physical reminder. The Stoics sometimes kept skulls on their desks. You could practice a daily reflection where you imagine this might be your last day. You could regularly ask yourself, if I died tomorrow, what would I regret not having done or said or become? Then let those reflections inform how you live today. If you'd regret not having told someone you love them, tell them now. If you'd regret not having pursued a dream, start pursuing it now. If you'd regret having wasted time on nonsense, stop wasting it now. If you'd regret not having become more disciplined, more kind, more courageous, start becoming those things now. Death awareness also puts social concerns in proper perspective. Embarrassment, others' judgment, status concerns, all of these shrink dramatically when you remember you're going to die. Will this matter on your deathbed? Will you care what strangers thought about you? Probably not. So why care so much now? This perspective creates remarkable courage and authenticity when others encounter someone living with death.